The first step was we added the pink in. We came in and added the shadow side and the highlight side. Now we're going to come back in and add some dark spots where the seeds of the strawberries go. So I'm going to pick up a little round. I guess this is a little tin. And what I want to do is make some little seed dots on my strawberries that are just a bit darker than the background of the strawberry. So over on this side, I'm going to add them just a little bit darker than this dark color. Over here, I'm going to make them just a little bit darker than this bright red. So let's see what we have here. Let's try this color, see if it shows up. I think it's going to need to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to bring in more of the phthalo blue. Just mix it with some of this mixture. This was the quinacridone magenta and the naphthol red light. So hopefully you can kind of see that that's a little bit darker over here. I'm just going to dot in some dots. One of the things that I've learned in painting these strawberries is to make these dots just a little bit bigger than you think they should be. So, a couple little pounces with the little round brush. We'll go ahead and dot some in up here. If you're looking at a reference photo, you don't have to do as many dots as a real strawberry has. Again, our viewers' eyes will read this and fill in, that it's a strawberry. Okay, let's go ahead and lighten up a little bit for the light side. And just like always, whenever you mix a new color, you saw there, I went in, didn't seem quite dark enough, so I'm going to mix a little bit darker. Now it's a little bit too dark. I really want to just barely be able to see the difference in the value. It's a little bit better. I mixed that color and I kind of didn't have enough for all of the dots that I wanted to do. But by doing these two different colors for these dots, we're already beginning to build, you can already see how effective that is by changing up that color. We're not going to get, again, this is a tiny piece, but generally, as you look at strawberries, these little seed dots will get a little bit smaller as they go down to the tip of the strawberry down at the bottom. That looks pretty good. I think I will pick up the very small, in that last fast forward, you could see that and working with the leaves, I moved to a small filbert. This is a size 2. And now we're going to come in and start to do some of our highlights around these seed spots. So I'm going to do pretty much pure red around some of the spots on the dark side. On the dark side. I just dipped into just a little bit of the extender. You could dip into the airbrush. I was just um, trying to thin out my paint a little bit because I really want this to be kind of just scrubbing in some highlights. So in that dark area around these little seed dots, I'm going to add in just kind of a little highlight. It just helps make them look a little bit juicier. So just a tiny bit of paint on my brush and kind of a scumbling motion to go around a couple of areas. We'll do that on this top one as well. The top one is a bit more hidden. It doesn't need quite as much. It's wonderful to be able to reuse the paint, but the longer that you do have the paint on your palette, whether it's the handy paper plate or a different palette, you do get to the point where you're limping along a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and do a purpley pink highlight. I'm going to get a little bit of quinacridone magenta, a little bit of phthalo blue, mix kind of a purple. See if I can dig down to get a little bit of white. And then I'm going to make it just a little bit redder. I kind of want a purpley pink. I have a little bit of a glare on my plate, so I'm trying to see the color. So since I just mixed, I'm going to get most of that paint off my brush, come back in and just get a little bit of paint. And I'm going to add less this time than the red that we did before. I just dipped into the airbrush medium and wiped out my brush again. I'm just touching along that paint to, again, not blend. I know we talk about that all the time, but just to kind of soften the edges of where I added that paint. I feel like that might be a little bit lighter than I really wanted it over there. Make it just a little bit more purple. Um, I can also come back in with a tiny bit of the red and just settle that in again. So touching along, I've got too much paint in my brush there. So just touching with some red along those areas to quiet them down a little bit, soften them a little bit. All right, let's make this one up here just a little bit darker. That's kind of an example of, I felt like when I put that on that it was a little bit too bright. I should have stopped immediately. This purple up here, that's more of what I was going for. It's no big deal. I can come back in here, go back over it with red again. In fact, I can probably just go ahead and do that now. And I can dip into this darker color too. If I need to come back in and redo the red highlights, I can do that. It's an example of don't do what I did. It happens. Like I mentioned before, I've been painting a lot. I've been painting quite a bit today. And so it gets toward the end of the day and you're kind of tired, you're kind of ready to stop, and little things like that happen. But it's always fixable. You could see there just how quickly I went over that and fixed it. Now I can come back in with a little bit of that darker purple and add in a little bit of that color of highlight. It really does just take just the tiniest little bit of paint on your brush. So once you have it in, once your paintbrush is almost empty, just go ahead and scumble along the edges. There. That looks really good. I'm going to do a highlight on the other side. So a lighter pink on the light side of our strawberries. I'll try to be a little bit more careful this time and not mess it up. So a little bit of white, a little bit of our naphthol red, a little bit of the quinacridone magenta. Remember, the quinacridone and the pyrrole red make a more true red. So now that I've mixed, I'm going to go ahead and dip my brush into either the airbrush medium or the extender, get most of the paint out of my brush, come back, pick up just a little bit of this pink, and then pick out some areas on the light side. So I just tapped my brush out. I think I tapped into the a little bit of the green on my rag. We talked about that the other day too. It's another one of the hazards of painting for a while in your studio. Your rag can get a little bit full of other colors. I'm gonna make that pink just a little bit darker. This isn't the final highlight, so I don't want it to get too light too fast. That's a better color. Get most of the paint out of my brush and come back in and tap along those edges. Because the air is so dry, to come back in and tap along the edges, you don't want to wait too long because it will dry, particularly because we're using just such small amounts of paint. It'll dry pretty quickly even on your piece. So do little bits at a time and then go back and add more if you like. So that looks really good. Um, you're really going to have to step back from it when you're sitting down at your studio painting. It can be, you can look at it and go, oh, I don't know if it looks quite right. But really, when you step back from this, the effect that you get from these steps really are so dramatic. I'm going to come back in now with our final highlight. I'm going to try to see if I can find some true white here. Go ahead and rinse out my brush a little bit just to try to get all those other colors out. And then thin out this white. Most of the paint out of my brush, just a little bit of paint. And I'm going to come back in, a little glob on the end, come back in and do the brightest highlights. Look at a reference photo and pick out where you can see some of those pink highlights that we've just done, where you can see some of the purpley highlights, and where you can see the brighter white highlights. I'm just going to tap along those areas. when you tap, if your highlight goes away too much, you can come back in and add it again. For this highlight, we really do want a couple of just brighter white pops of highlight. Let's go ahead and do a little bit down on the bottom here. Get most of the paint out of my brush and come back and tap along. And then I'll pick up just the tiniest touch of bright white and pick out a couple of areas where I really want to ramp that highlight up. I like it. That looks good. Spend some time with it. Take it upstairs. Hopefully, when you're painting this, you're painting a couple of them at a time so that, it's nice to paint a couple at a time because you can be letting one dry a little bit while you're working on another one. Let's see what I have here that is still workable for browns. This brown is pretty much a goner. I do still have a little bit of um, this darker brown. So for the dark brown, you could use the black and burnt sienna. My burnt sienna is pretty much dried out. And because I'm at the end of the day, I'm not going to put out more paint. So I just have a yellowy brown color. I'm going to thin mine out. And then I'll twirl my brush in the paint to try to get a little point to the brush. And then I'm just going to come in and tap along these seed areas to add in a little bit of the seed. I'm going to make mine just a little bit yellower. I almost said yellowier. Thin it again just so that it comes off my brush. You can just barely see that on the camera, I know, but that little detail really does add a lot. So a little bit darker seed on the dark side of your strawberry. Put some little seeds up here. And then a lighter yellow on the highlight side. Oops, I have a little hair in my brush. I'm always amazed at how easily they can hear like just a car go by or a mail delivery. I really like that. That looks really good. At this point, this piece is pretty much done. I'll spend a little bit of time with it. If I spend some time with it and I feel like it needs a few more of those seeds, I can always come back in and do more. But it really is so important at this stage to stand back from it, get a better view when you're not, so close to it. You can see how big my hands are, beside it. I'm like right here on top of it. So you really have to stand back. Um, I'm gonna end the filming for this class here. I think that this gives you a good idea of how to create this piece. Um, I might end up coming back in and doing just a few more highlights along some of the strawberry leaves. I might do another set of the bright white strokes on the flower just to, again, pop those up. That white does often need a couple of coats of paint, but I hope you'll make this. It's a really, really fun piece. I've done it great big on an 18-inch round. It's a stunning piece. I also love these little ones. So I hope that you'll give it a try. And if you do, leave me a comment and let me know.